Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm one interested in your opinions. I'm Rain, not a wealthy woman betrayed by her mother-in-law, but rather wronged by my own parents. This tale revolves around my good-for-nothing husband, Charlie, and how my parents chose to support him instead of me. This is the first time I'm sharing this story, as I don't have many people in my life. I encountered Charlie on a dating site around 6 years back. He held a respectable job and appeared to be a decent person. While he wasn't exactly a fairy tale prince, he was undeniably a caring boyfriend. Our initial years together were wonderful. We dated for 4 years before tying the knot. He quickly became the apple of my parents' eyes, though this did cause me some bitterness. At every family gathering, my parents would express their joy at having Charlie in the family. They'd often remark how I finally made a wise decision in life by bringing him along. They always longed for a son and seemed to see Charlie as a substitute, often overlooking my accomplishments and qualities. I admit, I was always seeking their approval and affection. They had always desired a son, and their inability to have one seemed to fuel their resentment towards me. Despite my efforts, excelling in school, securing a good job, even financially supporting them, they never showed me the appreciation I yearned for. Charlie, on the other hand, did little for them but still received their adoration. Charlie's charm with my parents made me overlook my own resentment. I was just glad they approved of something in my life. His parents had disowned him, and none of his relatives attended our wedding. I eventually discovered the reason behind his estrangement. He was a thief. The troubles began when Charlie opted for a lower-paying job to have more free time. When I questioned his decision, he shrugged it off, stating he needed to avoid depression and have time for his hobbies. This decision affected our finances, and he expected me to compensate by contributing more to our joint accounts. His disregard for my well-being and our mutual financial stability was alarming. One evening, after a particularly tense discussion about our finances, Charlie tried to ease the tension with his usual charm. "Rain, love, you worry too much. Everything will work out. You're amazing at your job, and we're doing just fine," he said, with a casualness that irked me. I couldn't help but retort, "Doing just fine? Charlie, you're barely contributing, and I'm stretching every dollar. This isn't what we agreed on when we got married." He just laughed it off, a trait that was once endearing but now just felt dismissive. "You're too serious, Rain. Let's go out for dinner, my treat." The offer of a dinner, though a nice gesture, felt like a band-aid on a deep wound. I agreed, more out of exhaustion than desire. At dinner, Charlie was his usual charming self, regaling me with stories of his day. Yet, I found my mind wandering to our mounting bills and the growing distance between us. His laughter filled the room, but it no longer reached my heart the way it used to. As we returned home, I found an envelope from my parents waiting for us. It was an invitation to their anniversary party. "Look, Rain, your parents are throwing a party. We must go. It'll be fun," Charlie exclaimed, scanning the invitation. I felt a pang of sadness, knowing that the joy of the party would be more about having Charlie there than celebrating their anniversary. "Yes, we'll go," I replied, trying to muster enthusiasm. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of isolation. Charlie, who once felt like my partner in every sense, now seemed like a stranger, his priorities and mine worlds apart. I gazed at him, his face serene in sleep, and wondered how we had come to this point. The man I married, who promised to be by my side, was now the source of my deepest anxieties. As sleep eluded me, my thoughts drifted to the upcoming family event. It would be another display of my parents' affection for Charlie, another day where my achievements would be overshadowed by their admiration for him. I sighed, feeling the weight of a life that was slowly slipping out of my control. As time passed, it became clear that Charlie's irresponsible behavior was the reason for his isolation from others. His actions and attitude towards our marriage were far from what I expected, leading to a growing rift between us. Charlie's indifference towards our financial issues, coupled with his refusal to keep even a portion of our finances separate, rang alarm bells in my mind. Despite this, I continued to support him out of love, which turned out to be a grave mistake. Charlie squandered whatever little money he contributed to our joint account on video games. He would add a mere $500 but withdraw even more later in the month. This led to numerous disputes between us. He was depleting my savings, consuming nearly all of my earnings, and at times, not contributing anything to our household expenses. He also neglected household chores, focusing only on his job, playing games, and buying whatever he fancied. Exhausted and feeling financially exploited, I found no resolution in discussions. Instead, Charlie would confront me aggressively. Even my parents sided with him, accusing me of financially abusing him, which was far from the truth. I was actually the one being drained financially, contributing to nearly 90% of our household expenses. My parents even chastised me for not allowing Charlie to use my credit card, labeling me as greedy for not indulging his spending habits. Despite explaining how he had previously misused my credit cards, they still defended him. His manipulation of my parents against me only fueled my anger. The love I once had for Charlie was diminishing rapidly. One particularly heated argument with Charlie left me feeling utterly drained. "Charlie, I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice trembling with frustration. "You're spending recklessly, and it's putting us in a terrible financial situation." Charlie, lounging on the couch with his latest gaming console, barely glanced my way. "Rain, you're overreacting. It's just a few games. Why can't you just relax a bit?" I clenched my fists, trying to control my rising anger. "It's not just a few games, Charlie. It's our future. It's our security. You're not seeing the bigger picture here." His dismissive chuckle was like a slap in the face. "Oh, come on. You're being dramatic. We're fine. You always find a way to make things work." That night, I called my parents, hoping for some understanding. "Mom, Dad, I'm really struggling with Charlie's spending habits. It's affecting our finances badly." To my dismay, their response was far from sympathetic. "Rain, you need to be more supportive of your husband," my mom said sternly. "He's going through a tough time. You should be grateful he's not asking for more." "But he's practically draining our savings," I protested, my voice cracking. Dad chimed in, his tone equally disapproving. "It's your duty to stand by your husband, Rain. You're not being a good wife if you're denying him small comforts. You make enough money. Why can't you be more generous?" Their words felt like betrayal. I hung up, feeling a sense of hopelessness. Their inability to see the reality of the situation was baffling. The next day, Charlie approached me with a sheepish grin. "Hey, Rain. So, I was thinking, could I use your credit card? There's this new game I really want." I stared at him in disbelief. "After everything we just talked about? Charlie, you can't be serious." He shrugged, his casual attitude infuriating me. "What's the big deal? It's just a game. Besides, your parents agree with me. You can afford it." I felt a surge of anger. "This isn't about affording it, Charlie. It's about responsibility, something you seem to have no concept of." As I walked away, his words echoed in my ears, a painful reminder of the widening chasm between us. The situation was spiraling out of control, and I felt powerless to stop it. Charlie's relentless disregard for our financial well-being and my parents' unwavering support for him left me feeling isolated and cornered in my own marriage. The situation escalated when I discovered he had illicitly withdrawn $20,000 from my personal account for a new gaming PC and accessories. Furious and unable to reverse the charges, I reached my breaking point and reported the incident to the police. Charlie's reaction was furiously incredulous. When the police apprehended Charlie, I was resolute that my marriage needed to end. However, what I didn't anticipate was the loss of more than just my husband due to my decisions. I informed my parents about the situation, not wanting them to hear it from someone else. I was worried about their silence in response to my messages, but too drained to ponder on it further, I went asleep. The next day, I learned that Charlie was released from jail because my parents had bailed him out. Shocked and in disbelief, I couldn't fathom why my parents would do such a thing. Charlie even mentioned that they had spoken ill of me at the police station. In search of answers, I hurried to my parents' house. Despite my efforts to keep them out of this, they had spoken to Charlie and paid for his bail. I was infuriated by their actions and confronted them. Their response was shocking. They accused me of financially controlling Charlie, labeling me a bad wife. They even criticized me for not sharing my finances with him, despite his repeated misuse of our funds. My parents didn't see his actions as wrong, insisting that a husband had a right to his wife's money. They disregarded the fact that he had stolen $20,000 from my accounts and had previously emptied our joint account. Their perspective was rooted in a belief that I, as a woman, was being unreasonable for earning more and not allowing Charlie free access to my finances. No matter how much I explained, my parents stood by Charlie, reflecting their long-held preference for a son over a daughter. They believed that having Charlie, a man, in their lives was more important than their successful daughter. Disappointed and hurt, I wasn't prepared for their next statement. They not only expressed disappointment in me, calling me a horrible woman, but also threatened to disown me if I didn't drop the case and take Charlie back. They planned to house him and cover his legal fees, completely disregarding the emotional and financial abuse I had suffered. Their decision to support a man who had wronged me so deeply was a stark revelation of their values and priorities. When the police detained Charlie, I firmly decided to end my marriage. What I didn't foresee was the extent of my parents' allegiance to him, even to the point of disowning me. They defended Charlie, seeing him as the son they never had, and were prepared to stand by him during this difficult period. Confronting my parents in their living room, the air was thick with tension. How could you bail him out? He stole from me, I exclaimed, barely containing my anger. My mother's voice was cold and unyielding. Rain, you've always been too hard on Charlie. He needs support, not condemnation. Dad, he committed a crime. He took $20,000 from me. I pleaded, seeking some sense of reason from him. My father, who had always been the quieter one, surprised me with his stern tone. Rain, a husband and wife share everything. That's how marriage works. You're just trying to control him. I was aghast. Share everything? Even when it involves stealing and lying? My mom interjected, you're just upset because you're too controlling with money. You should be ashamed of yourself, treating your husband like this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, he's manipulating you. Can't you see that? But their minds were made up. My father's next words cut deeper than anything else. If you don't drop the charges and take him back, we're done with you. Rain, we can't have a daughter who treats her husband so poorly. I stood there, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. You're choosing him over your own daughter? It's not about choosing, my mother said coldly. It's about doing what's right for the family. And right now, Charlie needs us more than you do. Their words echoed in my ears as I left their house, feeling a profound sense of loss. Not only was my marriage crumbling, but the relationship with my parents, which I had struggled to maintain for years, was now in tatters. As I drove away, tears blurred my vision. I had lost more than just a husband. I had lost my family. The realization that the people I loved and trusted most had turned against me was a heavy burden to bear. I was stunned by their partiality towards Charlie, but I never imagined they would choose him over their own daughter. They lauded my exploitative and lazy husband for his bad decisions while criticizing me for being responsible. Their words that day left me heartbroken, as I realized all my love for them had been misplaced. I confronted them with an ultimatum. If Charlie stayed with them, I would stop financially supporting them. They dismissed my threat, labeling me selfish and accusing me of using my wealth to manipulate others. They sternly told me not to contact them again. Both my mother and father were united in their decision, asking me to leave and never return. I left their house, overwhelmed with emotion, and broke down in my car. I realized that after over 30 years of trying to earn their love, they had discarded me without a second thought. The next day, Charlie called to boast about how he had usurped my place in my parents' home. He reveled in telling me how much they despised me now and preferred him. His words were cruel, taunting me for my failed attempts to win their affection, while he effortlessly gained their love. Unable to bear his mockery, I ended the call. Charlie even sent me a photo of himself on my old bed, a blatant act of provocation. Instead of succumbing to despair, I resolved to stop financially supporting my parents. Their reliance on my financial aid was apparent, and I anticipated that they would soon feel the impact of its absence. True to my prediction, my parents broke their no-contact pledge within days, beginning to pester and then demand money from me. Their sudden change in attitude revealed their true motivations and the shallow nature of their support for Charlie. My parents' call for financial aid, despite their previous insistence on cutting ties, was met with my firm response. I reminded them that they had chosen Charlie over me, even though he had not contributed anything to their household. They admitted to using their savings, which included the money I had given them, to bail Charlie out and cover his expenses. I pointed out the unfair treatment I had received from them for being a woman and choosing Charlie simply because he was a man. I expressed my long-standing efforts to be a good daughter and their failure to appreciate it. In that moment, I decided to cut them off, declaring that I no longer needed such people in my life. Confronting years of hurt and betrayal, I vehemently expressed my frustration to them. Surprisingly, they pleaded for forgiveness, citing dire financial straits caused by Charlie's actions, including stealing their credit cards and draining their savings. They even confessed to having reported him to the police and kicking him out. Despite their apologies and pleas, I remained resolute. I agreed to send them money only for that month, giving them a deadline to sort out their finances. I felt a pang of sympathy but remembered their disregard for me, which rekindled my anger. I did send them some money, not wanting them to suffer, but it was the last financial support I would provide. The call with my parents was a whirlwind of emotions. Rain, we didn't realize how much Charlie was taking advantage of us. My father's voice cracked over the phone. We need your help. I held the phone tightly, a mixture of anger and pity swirling within me. You chose him over me. You defended him, even when he was clearly in the wrong. My mother's voice was soft, filled with regret. We were blind, Rain. We see that now. Please, we need your assistance to get through this month. Their pleas tugged at my heartstrings, but the years of neglect and recent betrayal were too raw, too painful. I'll help you this one time, I said, my voice firm. But this is the last time. You need to sort out your finances and not rely on me anymore. I could hear the relief in their voices, but it was mixed with a sense of desperation. Thank you, Rain. We promise we'll get back on our feet, my mother assured me. After the call, I sat in silence, reflecting on the turbulent journey I had endured. The decision to cut financial ties with my parents was not easy, but it was necessary for my own well-being. I realized that my compassion had often been mistaken for weakness, and it was time for me to prioritize myself. Over the next few days, I began to reevaluate my life. The absence of my parents and Charlie's demands brought a sense of peace, yet it was bittersweet. I had always envisioned a life surrounded by loved ones, but now I found myself forging a path alone. As I started to rebuild my life, I focused on my career and personal growth. The quiet evenings were spent reflecting and planning for a future where I was no longer bound by the expectations and disappointments of others. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset, I realized that this solitude was not a sign of defeat, but a testament to my strength. I had endured and emerged stronger, more self-aware. Eventually, my parents returned the money I had sent them and continued to plead for forgiveness. In an unexpected turn, they signed over their house to me as an apology and took up jobs to support themselves. I returned the house papers to them, still not ready to reconcile. As for Charlie, I proceeded with the divorce and pressed charges for fraud. If the double case against him, his chances of avoiding jail were slim, and he was eventually incarcerated. The process of divorce and legal proceedings against Charlie was long and arduous. Sitting in the lawyer's office, signing paper after paper, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. My lawyer, a stern yet kind woman, handed me the final set of documents. Rain, once you sign these, it's all over. You'll be free from this chapter of your life. I took a deep breath and signed. Thank you. It's been a difficult journey, but it's time to move on. When the news of Charlie's incarceration reached me, it was a surreal moment. I felt a sense of justice, but it was also a reminder of the love that had turned so sour. The man I had once shared my life with was now a stranger, a chapter closed and sealed away. Meanwhile, my parents' attempts at reconciliation continued. They called frequently, their voices filled with regret. Rain, we're so sorry. We were wrong, my mother would say. We've realized our mistakes, my father added. Please, can we meet and talk? Each call left me with a turmoil of emotions. The wound was still fresh, and their betrayal wasn't easy to forget. However, their effort to make amends was evident. They had returned the money and were trying to be independent, a significant change from their previous behavior. I spent many nights contemplating their requests. The decision to forgive was not an easy one. It wasn't just about their betrayal, it was about years of feeling undervalued and unloved. Finally, I agreed to meet them. We sat in a quiet cafe, the air heavy with anticipation. Rain, we know we can't change the past, but we want to be a part of your future, my mother said, her eyes welling up with tears. We're not asking for your financial support anymore. We just want our daughter back, my father added, his voice laced with emotion. I listened, the words sinking in slowly. The path to forgiveness was not straightforward, but I saw the sincerity in their efforts. I need time, I said, my voice steady. Time to heal and to trust again. We can start slowly. As we parted ways, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead was uncertain, but there was a glimmer of hope for a new beginning, a chance to rebuild the broken bridges. The end of my marriage and the shift in my relationship with my parents marked a new era in my life. It was a time for healing, for self-discovery, and for building a future where I was no longer defined by the expectations and actions of others. As I walked away from the cafe, the sun breaking through the clouds, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of my narrative, ready to write the next chapter of my life on my own terms.